I'll teach you everything you need to know about remote events in 5 minutes. Remember how I told you before that clients and servers need to communicate with each other? And there's many situations where you want to talk to the server, like if you have a user input something, like if they press the E key and then you want an attack to happen. The attack will take place in the server, but the user input is controlled with the local script. And the way we do that is through remote events. Remote events are just an object that let local scripts communicate with the server scripts, and the server scripts communicate with the local scripts. To communicate from a local script to a server script using a remote event, first let's insert a remote event into replicated storage. Replicated means that it can be accessed through both local scripts and server scripts. So just put the remote event in the replicated storage. And to communicate from a local script to a server script using a remote event, we have to use one of its methods called fire server. So first let's just do local re equals game.replicated storage.remote event, and we have to use the method fire server. And it basically just sends a message to the server from whatever client sent it out. Let's look at how we receive this message on the server script. On the server script, we still have to access that remote event game.replicated storage.remote event, and we use this by using an event on server event. So when you're on a server script, you use the on server event because you're listening for when a server event happens. Then you do your typical event stuff, function, and bam. Now we print server has been triggered. So let's just go ahead and run this and see if it works. The server has been triggered. So again, to recap, this line of code right here, it's just the local script telling the remote event, hey, tell all the server scripts that I sent a message. And then this event right here is listening, hey, whenever you get a message, do whatever's in here. And I'll show you, like, we could even wait 3 seconds and it won't happen until 3 seconds later because it's actually working. See, when you go from a client firing to a server, it actually passes down an argument, and that argument is the player that triggered the event, and then we can then access that player and do things on the server side with it. We could print out that player's name, for example, player.name, wait 3 seconds, and server has been triggered by I have eyes of faith. Even though we didn't pass down an argument in the parentheses here, when you go from local script to a server script, it always passes down the player that triggered it. And I always just print out the name, so let me just show you some other stuff we could do. Like, you could access the player's character. Car player.character. And the character is like the physical representation of the player in the Roblox game. So like your R6, R15 bodies, that's where your character is. From the character, you can access its humanoid, and it has a health property. You can set that equal to 0. There's a lot you can do once you have the player and the character on the server side. Also, you can like teleport him or her using the humanoid root part and changing its C-frame to whatever you want. See that? To do this the other way around, from the server to the client, we still use the remote event, but this time we use a fire client method because we're firing to a client. But we have to specify which player in particular we want to fire it to. So yeah, so you'd already have to have gotten the player in some sort of way, either from listening to one client and then getting the player, or using a event to get the player, or you can get the player in many ways. You already have to have had a player. Let's just assume you already have a player. How do you listen to it on the local side? You listen to it pretty much the same way. You go to the remote event on client event, of course, and then your typical event stuff, then function, except this doesn't pass down a player by default because we know where the message came from. It came from the server. There's only one server. If we get a message from a client, there's multiple clients, so we have to know which client it is, but the local script doesn't need to know where the message came from. We already know it came from the server. And then we can print eyes of faith client was triggered. And since I don't have a player right now, I'll just show you something else I could do. You could fire all the clients, and this will send a message to everybody's local scripts in the game. I'll show you. I'll join in the game. Oh, by the way, if you just run the game, the local scripts will not work because remember I told you that the local script has to be duplicated inside of a player to work. So that's why I'm always playing now. Oh, it didn't work. That's because server scripts load faster than the player because you have to wait for the player to load in and the character load in. By the time this local script is listening, the server script has already loaded. So let's just wait 5 seconds and give it some time to load, and then fire all the players that have joined after we give it time to load. And bam, it was fired or triggered.